There are times in history where more happens in a small period of time than has occurred in huge stretches of previous time. A lot of times this is signified by, great upheaval, great social upheaval like wars or great struggles or revolutions. And it truly appears that we are in such a time right now. For a lot of different reasons, the cycles of history are increasing and becoming faster and faster and faster. And a lot of this has to do with technology and communications technology and the way it impacts civilization. And the interesting fact about this is it creates almost an electricity, a static, a tension that you can feel in the air. And I think people inherently are feeling this and do feel it. But this results in two different reactions in the people that are experiencing it. One is a reaction where people increasingly become energized and become a part of that energy. And the other one is where people just start to shut down. This has been shown in rat mazes, complex rat mazes, where the rats running through the maze get electroshocks. At a certain point, the rats become so traumatized from being shocked that they cease to try to solve the maze and they just go to a corner and they sit in the corner until they die. And that's a great analogy for the times and the situation that we find ourselves in, is this energy that's all around us, this quickening, this acceleration towards something that none of us can understand fully, but can feel completely. Some of us, it energizes us because we become ever more interested in finding our way through the maze. And others of us just completely atrophy and fall apart, where they become consumed by trivialities, entertainments, drugs, alcohol, all of the different ways that we've designed to anesthetize our human will. And they end up doing that. They entertain themselves to death. When I was younger, I remember watching Star Trek. And I remember when the Borg as a character were introduced in that show. And the Borg, if you never saw the show, were these human hybrid, transhumanist hybrids that had merged with machines and existed as a collective instead of having any individualization inside of their culture. And I used to ask myself the question, because I was always fascinated by it, and I said, I wonder how interesting it would be to see the story of how that civilization came to that. How do you go from being independent and organic and living in a human civilization to gradually absorbing yourself into machines and creating a collective? And I always used to think to myself, wow, that would be such a fascinating story to think about, to watch, that evolution. And then a few years ago, I began to realize that we were living in that story. That we ourselves are living in a time where human beings are making the decision of, will they merge with their technology or will they continue to use it as something outside and separate from themselves? And what are the implications of that choice? And what does that ultimately mean for human development? So, we live in this incredibly accelerating time where our world is fundamentally changing, our reality is fundamentally changing, and we can make a choice over what kind of future we want to have, of whether or not we want to capitulate our individuality and submerge ourselves into these technological systems and gradually be completely absorbed by them, or can we instead utilize our technology to free humanity from the shackles of their servitude to their own survival and give them the capability of pursuing transcendence through art, philosophy, the pursuit of truth, their individual relationships with each other. Now imagine that kind of world. Imagine a world where you didn't have to go to work at a 9-to-5 job unless you wanted to, unless you chose to. That whatever work you were pursuing was a work of either bettering yourself or bettering the world or creating something new. And that's ultimately where all of this technology goes, is it can either be used to create further systems that empower the individual and allow the individual the maximum capability of expressing themselves, or it can be used instead to create systems that continually gradually destroy their human individuality, take all of their power away from them, and totally submerge them and subjugate them into systems of control. And this can be done in all kinds of fascinating entertainment ways, merging with the machines to have better access to, alternate realities of games, and all of our resources being supplied to us from outside forces, governments and Amazons and corporations that give us everything that we could ever want, but take away all of our ability to supply it for ourselves or make our own choices. That's where these technologies, the two branching pathways of reality lead to, is the choice between, on one hand, empowering the human individual and giving the power back to the people, and giving communities, families, the individual the power to make their own decisions, supply their own goods. Or we go in the other direction, where all of that power is divested from the human individual into larger economies of scale, both government and corporations, all empowered by the technocracy. Right now, across the world, in Wuhan, China, in one of the central provinces, there's 50 million people on quarantine. They're in their homes. They're 100% dependent on the corporations and their government to supply them what they need to survive. They have no choice. They have no freedom. They have no choice in how their future will play out. They are 100% dependent on those mass systems to give them what they need. There are drones flying through the streets right now in that province, making sure that everyone is staying inside of their homes. The grocery stores have been wiped clean, and they're spraying pesticides all over the cities that are meant to help somehow limit the spread of the disease. And the fact is whatever scenario you decide to look at, whether it's an economic crisis, a social crisis brought about by, all of the disparity in our society, or it's a crisis brought about by the weather, by geological activity, anything that you look at, the truth is very few of us have the ability to take care of ourselves. Very few of us have the ability to supply for ourselves. And that's where freedom ends. That's where you become subservient to other systems. That's where your choice is taken away. So we're already on the path towards the future where people have no choice, where we're one giant crisis, whatever it may be, away from the systems taking full control of our lives and dictating everything that happens in them. And that's fundamentally a future I'm against. I don't think it leads to a happy place. I don't think it leads to a good place. I don't think it leads to a place where we're okay. I don't think that it leads to a place where any political faction can be trusted. And that leads to a deeper issue as well. The truth of the matter is that there are demagogues and there are controllers at every end of the political spectrum. And whatever solution that you think is the mass solution, is the big solution that can solve all of our problems, I can show you how the implementation of any system from the left or the right that can solve all of those problems can also create far greater ones. And so then you ask the question, well, Bart, what is it you're saying? How do we find a solution? There's two solutions I have. What I call the answer. One, and both of these come in the form of campaigns that we'll be launching through this show. That'll be the foundation of the message that I'm sending out. That I'm hoping there are enough of you out there to hear, that we can spread this message, that we can actually create a future that we can all want to live in. A future where the poorest of us are taken care of. a future where we have our independence and our liberty and our ability to make our own decisions for our own lives and our own bodies and our own families and our own communities. Because that's where this all goes to. One campaign is called Feed the Future. The Feed the Future campaign is very simple. And we will be creating platforms on Facebook. We will be utilizing social media and creating materials. And I will be executing this campaign here in Houston, Texas, as a model for other communities to follow. Hopefully around the state, around the country, and maybe even around the world. Now, the Feed the Future campaign is very simple. We have to start organizing at the community level, whether it's our families, our neighborhoods, towns, cities, whatever. We have to start coming together and creating food, power, and water systems that can take care of the communities in time of crisis, that we can supply our own food, our own power, and our own water to our families and our communities. That is how we take power back. That is how we give power back to the people. It doesn't matter how much storable food or weapons we have. This is about civilization. This is about the future of humanity. This is about humanity taking its power back. We have the technology. We have the resources. We can do this. This can happen. This is real. This starts with a sea change occurring at the ground level worldwide, with us completely changing the systems of how we're producing our resources. I'm talking about energy, water, and food independence for every family and every community in the United States and around the world. And we can do it. People want this. You want this. We all want this. And whether you're on the left or the right, the reasons for doing this are completely separate, but completely legitimate. On the left, if you want to create a more socialist system of distribution and care, you get your friends together, you create a commune, you all start working together, you pool your resources, and then you start operating that way, and you bring more and more people willingly into that system that want to do that. On the right, you want food independence, you want to create a profit, you want food security, you want to know that no outside nation, power, force, terrorist group can affect our country or kill people. You take back control, the means of power, water, and energy. Because then no outside threat can ever destroy the nation. So all of the political reasonings from the left and the right of resource management can be accomplished at the local level by local communities coming together and coalescing around what they're trying to achieve for their community. This solves problems. This creates strong minority groups. This creates strong cultures. This creates strong neighborhoods that can take care of themselves, that can determine what equity and justice is for themselves. Because now they have their own power. They aren't needing the power from a large state apparatus or being seceded to them by any other group. They can create their own power. Every group in the country can become self-sustaining, and when they become self-sustaining, they can dictate and determine their own future. It's the same for anybody that wants to be independent, that doesn't want to have systems of control or governments or corporations dictating how they live. This is the answer to how we create an equitable, stable, prosperous future for everyone. And it all begins with the power of the individual, with you taking your power back, with you finding like-minded people in your community that understand these concepts, coalescing around these concepts and coming together. That is the message that Feed the Future is bringing. That is the campaign that we are launching, that I will be doing here. And when we come together and we create that kind of future where we're implementing these systems and we're taking care of our families and we're taking care of our communities, we can end hunger. We can bring clean water and clean power cheaply to the masses. We can invest in ourselves and invest in our futures. That is what Feed the Future is all about. It is about feeding our collective future. by the power of the individual taking individual action to take care of themselves, finding like-minded people, coming together. This is the way. This is how we find our way out of the digital matrix system of control. This is how we create a future where no people anywhere will be able to be dominated by any other people utilizing force of arms or technology. And that is a future we can all get behind, regardless of our political persuasions, regardless of how we feel that the systems of control need to be operated. We can still have that debate, but that debate becomes far less important and far less pertinent when we take the power back for ourselves. Then everything simply becomes about our ideas and finding like-minded people to share in our ideas, instead of trying to force other people into our ideas by taking control of government. The second campaign. The second campaign is based on a very simple concept. It's called A41. A41 means all for one. This is a very simple thing. It's the idea that regardless of our political persuasions, we believe in freedom, we believe in the freedom to express ideas and debate them, and that we will not allow the demagoguery from whatever factions exist along the political spectrum to submerge and take away our right to intellectually debate ideas with one another. That there is no sacred cows, that there is nothing that, as long as we're willing to peacefully meet, we can't express in the free marketplace of ideas. And that we are committed to committing no act of violence against anyone else. This is what we need for our future. For us to have a human future, for us to be able to survive these trying times, for us to avoid the Borg technocracy of control, or socialistic, communistic, or fascistic systems of power. Because that is where we're heading. We exist in one of the most dynamic times in human history. And the fact is our republic shows the signs that every republic in the history of the world has shown. Overextension of its military, overuse of its resources, political corruption, mass entertainments to distract the public, huge deficits that cannot be maintained. This has all happened before. It's all happening again. And what history shows us is that what comes out of whatever collapse occurs from the political collapse that occurs from all of these other issues that build up to it, what comes next is slavery. You can put any face you want on it. You can put any definition you want on it, whether it's the left or the right. It could be either one. But with the combination of technology that exists today, if we go into a digital prison enforced by artificial intelligence, robotics, and drones, then the chance of a dystopian nightmare of control that is a direct threat to the world that we have known and all the freedoms and love that we cherish and beauty that exists, that threat is real and it is standing at the door right now. We are one event away from starting down that dark path. And once we start down that dark path, it will dominate our destiny forever. This is the choice of our time. This is the choice that we have to make. And the truth is, despite all of the problems, despite all of the apathy, humans today are more educated. We have more access to information. We have more capability of disseminating that information than has ever existed before. I'm sitting in a room right now by myself, broadcasting this message out to the world, transmitting this message out to the world. And it has a chance to go out. It has a chance to be taken on. And if we take that chance, if we embrace these principles, that we're all in this together, that we're all human beings, that we all want a better, brighter future, and we're willing peacefully to come to the table and have a discussion about how to achieve that future, that between that discussion and between the technology that exists today, we have the capability of solving this problem. We have the capability of building a better future. something that has never before even been imagined in the history of the world. A future without hunger, a future where people are free to make their own decisions and live their own lives. That is the message that I'm bringing to the world, that I'm asking for you to become a part of, that I'm asking for you to help me share to the world. That we're all in this together, A41, all for one. And that we can create a future where we're all free and independent and in charge of our own destinies. Feed the future. Help me spread this message. This can be the greatest moment in human civilization, where we achieve the greatest heights of freedom and independence and humanity. But first, we must have faced this terrible assault of darkness and fear. If we're brave enough, if we're compassionate enough, and if we're willing to embrace truth in its highest ideals, then we will pass through this darkness and we will find the promised land. That's what I'm living for. And that's what I hope you'll help me fight for in the future.